Okay, our last two Catholic Masterclasses focused on vestments that priests and bishops wear. A little bit of a shout out to deacons as well. I hope that was helpful for you. If you want to go back and relearn the names or double check and confirm that you know the names of the different vestments, you're certainly welcome to go back and listen to those episodes. I find it really interesting, I guess, just to know them, good bit of Catholic trivia. Okay, this week we're tackling a daunting task, which is going to keep with the theme of dressing for Mass. And that task or that topic is to focus on you and what you are to wear, what you're meant to wear during Mass. I know this is a tricky thing because there's a few things in our world, in our culture, that we don't like being told what to do about. And I think dressing is one of those things. We don't like being told when someone tells us what to wear or what not to wear. So I'm fully aware that this might be a sensitive topic for some people, but I still think it's worth our consideration. In fact, something I've learned actually as I studied this just this week is that this is a topic that has been addressed throughout history by various saints and bishops and priests and other religious leaders. It seems like one of those hot topics that just has always remained a hot topic, that dressing and fashion just seems to be something that we tend to kind of get consumed by in different ways, and we don't like being instructed too strongly one way or the other. And yet I think it's, like I said, it's worth our consideration. And to be sure, just to start off here, to be sure, as far as I know, there are no actual laws about how you are to dress during Mass. That is to say, you, the lay faithful, you who are attending Mass rather than presiding at Mass. There are sort of laws about how altar servers are to dress, and others who are helping with the various ministries, reading, etc. They are to dress in a dignified way. The priest, of course, has laws for how to dress, but people sitting in the congregation, as far as I know, there are no laws about that, except that you should be wearing clothes. Yes, so just please wear clothes to Mass. That's a really important thing. And I suppose sometimes you'd think you wouldn't have to say something like that, but if you've ever been to Mass in the summertime by a lake area, you might be surprised, actually, that you need to remind people of that. Okay, so anyway, so let's jump in. I'm going to propose a parable that Jesus talks about and just look at little bits of that parable and how this is inviting us to consider, I'd say, a couple of different factors, including our external things. So Matthew chapter 22, I invite you to read this. Matthew chapter 22, verses 1 through 14. I'm not going to read it. You can read it on your own. But Jesus talks about a parable. He speaks a parable about a king who hosts a great wedding banquet for his people. And he invites all kinds of people, and those people start to make excuses for not coming. One talks about how he just bought some oxen. Another person talks about how he just got married. He needs to go check. Another person needs to go check his field. It's like, okay, what kind of excuses are you making for not coming to this banquet? And yet that's what's happening. And so the king is actually pretty angry about it. And so he's like, fine, go and invite other people, and let's fill this place up so that if those people change their minds, they can't actually come because the banquet hall is full. And so it talks about how they go out to the highways and the byways, and they just invite all kinds of people. And it's great because the hall is full of people. But then something strange happens. The king notices a man at the banquet, and he notices that he's not dressed for the occasion. You see, when you go to a wedding, at the time of Jesus anyways, it was a customary thing, I suppose expected thing, that people would put on a wedding garment. That is to say that they would dress up for the occasion, to recognize that the occasion of a wedding is a dignified event that is not, it's more dignified than maybe the ordinary humdrum of life. And so if you're going to a dignified event, you need to dress up for the occasion. And so this man was not wearing a wedding garment. And so the king is like, how did you even get in here without a wedding garment? And the man is speechless. He has nothing to say. He's like, as though he just knows, like, I'm busted. I know that I'm not dressed for the occasion. And so the king actually kicks him out, and doesn't just kick him out, but like he binds him up and he punishes him because he's not dressed for the occasion. And so anyway, that's the parable. And to be sure, like the wedding garment that is in the parable, there's symbolic value. So parables of Jesus oftentimes have symbolic value as well as what's found in face value. So there's symbolic value, spiritual value to this wedding garment. But at the same time, it is true that there's this face value reality that Jesus expects us to be prepared at all times in all different ways. And so what's happening is that when we find ourselves going to a banquet of God, we need to make sure that we are prepared for that banquet in all kinds of different ways. And what is that banquet? Of course, that banquet is the kingdom of heaven. We know what the parable is about. But on this side of heaven, that banquet is what? It is where heaven touches earth, which is what the Mass is. So when we go to Mass, you are attending the great banquet of the Lord. You're there to offer your worship. So you're not just there as like a passive attendant, but you are there to offer, to participate in the worship. And at the same time, as we go to offer our worship, what happens? Jesus, in turn, feeds us with this incredible food of the Eucharist. He feeds us with his body, blood, soul, and divinity. And he calls it this great marriage banquet, the marriage feast of the Lamb, which is who Jesus is. So anyway, so it's this great banquet of God. And so if that's the case, we need to be prepared. And our preparation begins above all with our interior disposition. That is to say that when I come to Mass, I need to be in a state of reflection. I need to be in a state of repentance. Maybe actually I need to go to confession if I've committed a mortal sin. And even if I haven't committed a mortal sin, I just need to be conscious of my sins. We'll talk about that when we get to the penitential act of the Mass. I need to be in a state of awe as much as I can. Like there's distractions in life and that happens. But as much as I can, to be in a state of awe and reflection and wonder at this incredible mystery before me. So that interior disposition is absolutely necessary. And at the same time, there is an exterior disposition that we need to have as well. Here's an example. So keeping in line with the parable of Jesus, I recently attended a wedding. And at this wedding, it was a really striking thing. I wasn't sure what to expect. And at this wedding, I noticed that everybody dressed for the occasion. That is to say, they recognized that this wedding, this marriage that was taking place, was a step above of everything else that they do in their life, or most things that they do in their life. And so it's a dignified event. And so I noticed, even though I wasn't really expecting it, I noticed that everybody was dressed up for the occasion. Even though a lot of them were uncomfortable, it was maybe an inconvenient thing for some of them to dress up. Nonetheless, they recognized the great dignity of what they were doing. And so it just kind of opened my eyes. Well, it didn't open my eyes. It confirmed for me this very thought of like, do we recognize that what we're doing when we attend Mass is even a step above that, or maybe multiple steps above that, that when we attend Mass, we are attending the most dignified event in our lives, that we're attending the most important event of our lives when we go to Mass. And so there's, again, this interior disposition, but there's also a question of, am I dressing in such a way that I'm expressing that interior disposition by acknowledging this is the most important thing. This is the most dignified thing that I could attend, that I could come to, in such a way that I want to dress for the occasion. So that's the invitation. Again, there's not, as far as I know, there are no actual laws about this. But I still think, again, it's worth our consideration of like, is it possible for me to dress for the occasion? Alongside of that, one little note. I know that some of us grew up at a time when it was mandatory for women and girls, when they went into a church, to wear some sort of head covering, a veil, or I hear people talk about how they put on their doily, or if they didn't have something, they would put on like a little a Kleenex or something, a tissue over their heads, just because they had to follow those laws. And I know that wasn't always explained, and it was confusing for a lot of people. The veil, historically speaking, has been understood to be something that women wear in the presence of God as a sign of modesty and humility in coming before the Lord. If you can remember, when I spoke about the Ark of the Covenant and how in the desert, whenever the people would move, they would, of course, have to move all of their articles for worship, including the Ark and the altar and all those different things. And when they moved, these things were out in open space, they veiled them. They put a veil over them as though to say, like, this belongs to God. And so it's not just for everybody to look at. This belongs to God. And so we actually want to reserve its beauty and its glory for the Lord. And so for women, the principle has been the same. And to be sure, there's no mandate on this any longer. But that's been the principle throughout history, is that women recognize, like, there's a beauty to women that needs to be reserved for the Lord, at least during the time for Mass. And so women have put on veils as a way to express their modesty and their humility in coming before the Lord. And like I said, this isn't something that's mandatory, but it is something that I've noticed more and more women are engaging in this. It's still not a majority by any means, but there are more people, more women, especially young women, I've noticed, who are just trying to take this seriously. And that's not to say that those who don't wear one, who don't want to wear one, are not taking it seriously. That's not to say that at all. But it is to say that there is a movement happening in some women's hearts that just say, you know what, I want to embrace this beautiful tradition of wearing a veil over my head so that during the time of Mass, I can know I'm not trying to draw attention to myself, to my physical features, to my personal beauty, but I'm actually, by the way that I'm dressing, I'm actually trying to cover myself up to let myself be reserved for the Lord so that I can focus on him and so that hopefully other people can focus on him entirely. That's a really beautiful thing. And like I said, if you don't wear one, that's not a problem. But what a beautiful thing for all of us to consider that kind of a mindset of, when I come to Mass, I want to dress in such a way that I'm expressing the dignity of the thing that I'm attending, which is this incredible banquet of the Lord. And I also want to do it in such a way that I'm not drawing attention to myself, but I'm actually showing people that I'm here to worship, that I'm here for God, and to let myself be reserved for him. That's beautiful. I hope that's helpful for you, and I will look forward to seeing you next week. God bless you.